It's another Manly Monday, and yes, this Manly Monday I'm recording on Friday before I go to an event, the Stocktoberfest, the homeless benefit, benefit for people experiencing homelessness, and that's why my lips are red. I'm not sure. It looks better than in person on here, but I don't know. I may change it before I go. Anyway, it's a little wah. But this is, we pause and reflect before we act. This is relevant to this video and maybe like the red traffic lights, stop, all these mnemonics. Yeah, we are talking about just stopping today. And the nice thing about doing Manly Monday is, even though this is good advice for everyone, and I know multiple women watch Manly Monday regularly, I'm going to tailor this to the particular benefits towards guys for stopping. Because let's face it, there's just certain things that, I say this all the time, men are allowed to get away with in society that women aren't. Vice versa, women are allowed to get away with certain things in society that men aren't. And, aggression is this thing that men get checked on all the time. And there's a difficulty here in social programming, because men know that, too much aggression can get them into trouble. However, there's also this weakness thing. I mean, I'm hesitant to even use the word because it creates such a buzz in so many people's brains. I actually said to a friend earlier today being the day I shoot this video, that I think that if I actually was present for somebody calling their son, I mean any kid, but especially their son, weak, I probably wouldn't be able to hold back saying something. It is so damaging to the development of the sense of selves of boys and young men, that it requires. That's one of those things I'd almost do like a workshop on. We need more than 30 minutes to, compassionately and gently delve into that. So if anybody is interested in that, leave a comment just so I know. Maybe I can set up some like pre-registration so you get an email when it's open or something like that. I don't know. That's something I want to do in 2026 is more workshops. Just need to carve out the time. But yeah, that, because of the terror of appearing weak and therefore, falling lower on the male hierarchy, there's this tendency to act without thinking that traps men in a way that women get more social permissions for. It doesn't mean they're rewarded for it, but I don't hear men being talked about as hot messes, sort of affectionately, the way women are. I can't stand the whole hot mess thing, but that's a topic for another time. You can get into a lot of trouble acting without thinking. You can lose friends. You can damage relationships. You can lose your job. You can get into trouble with the law. We all know this. So what is going on? I mean, if this is important to you, I'm not suggesting it is. The stress hormone adrenaline is connected to this, and adrenaline lowers testosterone levels in the body. So if you care about that, watch your stress to watch your adrenaline so it doesn't suppress your testosterone production. I'm not particularly motivated by that shit. I've been insufficiently female my entire life. So, I'm not saying you should care about this. Just those of you that do, I know you're out there. Data point. So, regarding the more like psychosocial elements of this, the idea that action is always better is not necessarily so. And when our brain gets flooded with stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, the entire purpose of those is to scream at us to do something. And this is when we often get into trouble. And it's not just about what we do, it's also the balls we drop when we're trying to juggle a bazillion different things and we get overloaded. Just based on anecdotal observations on my part, I have not tried to pull data for this yet. I will. But it does seem like a lot of men are so habitually overloaded and overwhelmed, they can't actually recognize they are overloaded and overwhelmed. Of course, we go back to, but being overwhelmed is weakness. No, it's not. It's a biochemical response. And yes, certain, military training, police training, firefighting training, other types of training like that do help with conditioning for particular types of stressful situations, but everyone has an overwhelm threshold. And strength is about figuring out where yours is so you can stop yourself from hitting it. That is how we are resilient, right? But men are not trained to do this. Men are trained to throw themselves on the bloody grenade over and over and over and over again, and then they deny it hurts. And this is all BS. And just to be clear, because people get upset with me for this, when I say something is bullshit, it doesn't mean someone is knowingly lying. I usually mean it as more, this is, crappy social programming or self-delusion. And the reason the difference between self-delusion and lying is important is a lie is an intentional untruth told to another person. Self-delusion is convincing yourself something isn't true. And it is amazing how many people I see lately who do not actually know why they are doing things. And this gets people into a lot of trouble. And when people are believed to be the more physically strong of the binary gender system, that can cause unique problems if you come off as aggressive when you are panicking. And this is why I say, just stop. Now, science is behind me. This isn't some feminist screed, okay? Science indicates that slowing down and stopping for a moment, call it a pause if you want, but I prefer stop because I find, okay, pause. I was like, want to go. And I didn't do the important parts of the stop. Just stop. Red button, stop. What it does, and this is what I had to do because I have a fight response to panic. There are a lot of reasons for this, but I do believe that it was socially trained. I don't believe I was born that way. So guys, I hear you. But stopping reduces impulsivity. And, that adrenaline makes us want to be impulsive because either, drop it or run away super fast. That's the importance of adrenaline. Lizard brain way. But stopping for a second not only reduces impulsivity, which gives us a chance to think more clearly. It's not going to be totally clear, but more clearly. But it also reduces stress long term because shit's not blowing up as much. It increases our focus because we don't have bananagrams in our brain all the time. It's lowering the self-delulu. And, therefore, over time, things increasingly get better instead of those periodic crashes that a lot of people struggle with. And so how do we do this? Because, yes, there is this pressure on men to act. There is this pressure on men to react. There is this pressure on men to be actively strong. And yet, especially in people who were bullied as kids, there is unfortunately this association between strength and bullying, and that's where you get into trouble. And that's another application of stop, red lip, stop sign, that I find extremely helpful. Because yes, when I was a kid growing up under fairly violent circumstances, there was a tactic that if you seemed big and scary and you just, verbally bludgeoned the other person, if you tore them down emotionally, if you said every awful thing you could think of, yes, in the moment you survived that encounter. You didn't get your ass kicked. That was, how you survived poverty and violence. That does not help you in places like work, climbing the corporate ladder, making a lot of money, because, rich people are really good at pushing people's buttons. And then when someone pushes back, it's, oh no, that's uncalled for. I'm going to get my lawyer. The J.K. Rowling method. And, there's an example of somebody who just dishes it out, and hides behind her woman status every time she gets into trouble. And this is something you gotta watch. You gotta watch this with women. And it is everywhere. Why? Because it's effective. And you see it a lot in feminist circles because the attitude is, and this is something I have actually found has stalled progress personally, that a lot of feminist groups rely on gender stereotypes that are not actually true to short-term get advances. So like women's shelters and, domestic violence programs and stuff like that. But we have plateaued in terms of improvement precisely because now we're mired in those gender stereotypes. And we're seeing they call it a she session right now of women leaving the workforce because, the balance of responsibilities and the cost of childcare, is meaning, one spouse has to cut back or give up on their jobs. Women tend to make less money than their husbands, and women are still more responsible for the bulk of the household and child rearing, responsibilities and work. So women are leaving the workforce. I think I saw it was to the tune of 450,000 people between, I think it was January and August. I could be a little bit off there, but that from memory, I just read it this morning. And there are trade-offs to that. Women can do the, I'm scared and weak in a way that men can't. And I don't do that. And I'm socially punished for it. But the reason I don't do that is people don't really listen to you when you rely on that, because nobody wants to be led by a weak person. And trust me, a lot of those women who pull that card in public, they are savvy manipulators behind the scenes. That's how they can still get people to do what they want. People don't listen to them out of respect. They listen to them because they're afraid of them, because they've been on the receiving end of their manipulation and they don't want to go through that again. And let's face it, this is the reality. And it's not that there aren't manipulative men out there. We've all met them. It's just a different strategy. But when it comes to aggression, my opinion is, and this is true for men or women, but in terms of false accusations and all that stuff, or, exaggerated accusations, this is really important for you guys. Running a clean race is more important than backing someone off as quickly as possible. So we're talking in video game terms, like take no damage versus, glass cannon approach. Unfortunately, a lot of people do a glass cannon approach. They've seen their parents, they've seen other members of their family just hurl accusations to put someone on the back foot and get them to temporarily back off. God knows my family does that. They do not like it when I don't play that game. Of course, they pretended they didn't like it when I did, but because I was the one seeing a psychologist when I was 15 years old, I was the crazy one. Therefore, I was scary. Therefore, they could say anything they wanted to me. And if I gave back at all in kind, oh, I'm uncomfortable around her. I feel unsafe. And I fucking hate that to this day. You guys feel me, right? You've been through this. This is a manipulation and it works. So what you got to do is stop. When someone is pushing your buttons, when someone is accusing you of shit that is just not true. And it's really funny to me. I just must give off dude energy because the number of guys who think they can get me to do what they want through name calling, it's incredible. You're cruel. You're deliberately cruel. Well, you're not in my head, motherfucker. I know I'm not. We are done. Right? Shit like that. Like, you're such a bitch. Or, you know, the C-bombs. What? I call my guy friend C-bomb. I'm not even going to say it. Because you get in trouble on YouTube for shit like that. There's a reason. And they are being cute. On some level, they know that they are name calling. They know it's technically not nice. They are also fully prepared. If you respond in kind, this is the thing about you're abusive, you're deliberately cruel, you're hurting me, right? If you're hurting me, okay, I feel hurt, fair. That's a fair communication. But keep in mind, guys, and everyone, you get that message, you know, you're abusing me. If your inclination is to fight fire with fire there and respond to a false accusation, which is its own form of abuse. Remember that it's a form of abuse. Might be low level, might be very normal, but it is. Saying how you feel is fair. You know, I feel beat up right now. Totally fair. I feel hurt. I feel frightened. All completely fair. But you're deliberately cruel is intent. You're being abusive and you know it is intent. That's a guess. They're not Charles Xavier. They're not Jean Grey. They can't read your mind. If you respond in kind, expect the person to go to someone. Likely only show them your retaliation or show them the whole conversation, knowing that they're the one controlling the flow of information. They can shade their provocation, going, well, I was scared. She was being so mean to me. Right? And they'll believe it. Because when someone is right in front of you, when they can see that person's emotion and they can't see yours, that is powerful for people who are first and foremost emotional reasoners. I've been caught up on this one so many times. I have flat out said to people, look, you can see him crying. You can't see my reaction. That is probably impacting your reactions. And the person said, yeah, you're probably right. And they just kept fucking doing it anyway. Because I was not there, because it was not right in front of their face, and because the lizard brain, the mirror neurons in our minds that make us feel things that we're observing from other people, catching feelings, because of that phenomenon. If you're not there to defend yourself, it's the person who gets to, you know, the fluff brain first. We have to understand that the vast majority of people, all people naturally, emotions happen faster than thought. And it takes work, not just training, but ongoing work to stop that process and take a minute to think, right? False accusations suck. They do. Name calling hurts. That's why people do it. Like, if you got a name caller in your life, they're doing it to knock you off balance. They may not realize consciously why they're doing it, but they're doing it because it works, because it was probably done to them and it made them feel bad. And so they thought, it made me tough, which means it changed their behavior. It manipulated them. And so they're just passing forward because they think, well, I turned out fine, but really they didn't. They're verbally abusive. Don't take that bait. Stop. This has helped me more times than I can count. Even when I was actively trauma triggered and told the people that I was being symptomatic in the trauma, they still act like I'm just being a big bitch, which, let's face it, deliberate cruelty is a fancy thesaurus word for bitch. And that was deliberate. Yeah, probably. See, I caught myself. You stop. Yeah. It probably wasn't deliberate. It was probably social training. Just say the thing you instinctively believe will make someone do what you want, which in this case is stop. And that's why we tend to go, oh, you're trying to make me stop. Fuck you, I'm not going to. You can't do that. You can't. Real talk. This is a real talk video, right? You can't. Because again, they're trying to paint you as cruel and mean and awful and abusive and social violence and all that stuff, right? And if you continue to push forward, you are giving them ammunition. And this is why it's a stop, not a pause, right? Because I'm telling you, you'll go, look, let's just not go for anyone's intents here, okay? Let's just assume everybody has goodwill. Nobody's doing anything to anybody on purpose. And they'll go, yes, you're right. And they'll be back to that accusation the first chance they get. They will hit that button the first chance they get to try to set you off. And again, it's an instinctual thing. You got to be the person that's in control of yourself. You have to be the one who actively goes, I'm going to stop as a conscious act for me because it's good for me. That is the counter move to you stopping because they hurt you. Because they said the thing that they know you well enough to know is going to wound you on a fundamental level. Maybe even trigger PTSD. And there's a lot of people who go, oh yes, I believe strongly in mental health. And then they don't watch that shit and think it's not gonna matter. Well, it shouldn't matter. It was how I felt. That's a manipulation. That is bullshit. You're this thing is not, I feel scared. Remember this, right? Because we're stopping as a conscious act, not a reaction to their button pushing. And that's the key. That's how you win. That's how you're not doing it because they said a shitty thing. You're doing it because you know it's the right thing for you. And then the stopping continues. No, you're not going to get what you want from me this way. When you can have a conversation that isn't full of accusations, I'm happy to talk to you. But until then, nope. Nobody is going to be able to show that to a third party and claim you were abusive. And if they do, you got to question that third party, right? That is pretty much above a reproach textbook behavior of, hey, I'm happy to talk to you, but I'm going to set some rules. I'm going to say when it stops. Why? because this has to be a productive conversation, which means it has to stay calm. We got to de-escalate it. And name calling escalates. Everybody knows that. Everyone knows that. And they come up with reasons, and those reasons are all bullshit. Why are they name calling? Because it hurts. Why are they doing it? To hurt you. That is the simple thing. When they stop bullshitting themselves and coming up with all these, a posteriori rationalizations about why they name called, it really is that simple. Why they wanted to hurt you, why they wanted to be hurtful. Well, yeah, sure, there are reasons for that, but that gets away from the realization that when you hurt, you do so consciously, because there's no other reason really to name call, unless of course you're on Twitter and you're playing to an audience. And yeah, that's the whole owning the libs thing, right? That's a look at that loser, which is a form of bullying. I mean, it's very effective, but own what you're doing, And if you're somebody who says, I can't stand bullies, and then you engage in that, everyone can see your hypocrisy. So stop. Stop. And not just stop what you're doing. Stop accepting that shitty behavior from other people. That's not going to make you lose friends. That's going to cause you to attract more high quality people, which will result in better friendships. If people don't respect no stop, they're not your friends. And they may be the products of very severe emotional abuse. That's unfortunate for them. They're not bad people. They're good people at their core, but they have terrible habits. And people who don't respect no and stop can't be good friends, because they don't respect no and stop. Because not only do they not respect no and stop with other people, I have never met a person who truly respected that in themselves, but didn't respect it in others. Their boundaries are busted all the time. And that's why they're constantly flying off the handle and doing crazy shit and acting before thinking. Stop is not about weakness. How do you prevent damage? Armor, blocking. These are all stops, right? Stops are strength. And the sooner you realize that, and the sooner you learn to say no sooner. And simple things, like there is this horrible habit and where people won't want to do something, but they won't say so. They'll go, that's interesting. And hope the person just doesn't take it forward. And then if the person does take it forward, accuse them of being too aggressive. I ended up in that one. Yeah, they're like, well, you said it was interesting. Oh, that was just being nice. You're being too aggressive. You need to stop. It's bullshit. Walk away from that. And I feel bad because somebody I know actually said that's interesting because they thought it was interesting and the person thought it was a brush off because it's used as a brush off so often. And this is one of these things that there's so much of this shit to keep track of. We're not going to keep track of all of it. So just recognize if you mean no harm, that matters. And someone's reactions are their responsibility. And they're allowed to have them. You can understand. You can go, okay, that's how other people use that. It's not how I used it, but I understand if that's your experience. I see why you're upset. See, that's a strong action too, right? That just stops the blame, but I didn't mean it that way. But that's how everybody else I know means it. But I didn't mean it that way. But that's how other people mean it. But I didn't mean it that way. Someone's got to stop that cycle. That's what we mean by being the bigger person. And I've had multiple people say to me lately, I'm tired of changing who I am. This isn't changing who you are. Changing how you communicate is not changing who you are. Who you are is your values. Who you are is, what matters to you, what you think is right, what you think is wrong. Everything else, in my opinion, everything else Your physicality, your looks, your job, your income bracket, anything else, none of those things matter in terms of who you are. Who you are is your values. Who you are is your beliefs. You don't have to change your beliefs to change the way you communicate, unless, you believe in insulting and bullying people. If that's a core belief of yours, you may want to stop and reassess. I don't think it is for most people, though. I think people are doing these things reactively because they're doing it because they feel small and they feel weak and they feel frightened. And when we do that, we tend to echo our biggest historical bully because you're scared, so you try to be scary. The thing I said right off the top, we did in school to not get picked on. And eventually I adapted that, by the way, by just acting so crazy that people didn't know what we were going to do. So they left us alone. That was actually more effective than being a straight up bully, if you're interested. People were so freaked out that they just didn't dare. True story. And it was kind of freeing. But, yeah. Altering your approach to things to live more in accordance with your values, your stated values, what you believe, is not changing your values. It's reducing your hypocrisy. And that willingness to look inside, that willingness to adapt and refine, that is true strength. And the only way you get strong that way is to stop and rationally reassess. And you do that, I guarantee you, the pain in your life will stop. The fear in your life will stop happening as often. You will stop feeling so taken advantage of. That doesn't mean you never get taken advantage of. Fucktober 2, Tylenol Boogaloo this year, the sequel. But they can cause less damage. And when it comes to people figuring out who to believe when people start lying about you, you running a clean program, you playing defense, and actual defense, not offense as a form of defense. Like, don't insult back because they insulted you and go, they made me. You're taking a risk there. Not taking the bait, you're going to come out best in the long run to that. And I say this as somebody who dumped hours and 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 hours in private conversations recently and got no traction with them. It works. It really does work. Hard learned through many, many cancellations. Learn from my pain. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/LeannaK. There's the headphones fundraiser because mine are fucking broken and shitification lives. Well, they're breaking. The charging is loose. But coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching Manly Mondays.